Life always gives us challenges and adversities. Those who know how to overcome will survive. Those who turn difficulties into opportunities will be the winners. The 5 best inspirational life stories that shares will help you not only become stronger, but also open your mind. 1. What do difficulties and challenges leave behind? Once, in a small village nestled between green hills and whispering forests, there lived a young man who was going through a very dark period in his life. Life had not been kind to him lately. He had lost his job, faced betrayal from a close friend, and felt as though everything he had once believed in was crumbling. Every day felt heavier than the last, and hope seemed like a distant memory. One evening, unable to carry the burden any longer, he sought out an old wise man who was known in the village for his calm demeanor and sage advice. The young man poured out his heart, voice trembling with frustration and despair. "Why does life have to be so difficult?" he asked. "Why do I always feel like I'm the only one struggling? I don't know how much longer I can endure this. Everything feels hopeless." The old man listened quietly, not interrupting. When the young man was done speaking, the old man simply got up without saying a word. The young man sat in confused silence as the old man walked to the kitchen. He lit a small fire and placed a pot of water over it. As the water began to heat up, the old man placed 3 items on the table: a raw carrot, an egg, and a small heap of salt. Without explaining anything, he put the carrot into the boiling water. Then he added the egg. Finally, he gently poured in the salt. The young man watched, puzzled and impatient. Several minutes passed, the silence in the room only broken by the bubbling of the pot. Finally, the old man turned off the stove, took out the 3 items, and placed them on separate plates. Then, he turned to the young man and asked softly, "What do you see?" The young man replied, "A carrot, an egg, and some salt." The old man nodded. "Look closer," he said. He handed the young man a fork and asked him to touch the carrot. It was soft and mushy. Then he gestured to the egg and told him to peel it. Underneath the shell, it had become firm and solid. Finally, he scooped some of the water and offered it to the young man to taste. It was flavored, slightly salty, as the salt had completely dissolved and mixed with the water. Still confused, the young man looked at the old man for answers. The old man smiled and finally spoke. Each of these 3 items faced the same adversity, boiling water, but each reacted differently. The carrot entered the water strong and unyielding, but after the boiling, it became soft and weak. The egg started fragile, with its shell protecting a liquid interior. Yet after sitting in boiling water, it became hard inside. And the salt? It was unique. It didn't resist, didn't break, and didn't become weak. Instead, it changed the water itself. It transformed the environment around it. He paused and looked into the young man's eyes. "So, my dear boy, which one are you? When trouble knocks on your door, when hardship boils your world, how will you respond? Will you become weak and lose your strength like the carrot? Will you harden inside and shut yourself off like the egg? Or will you dissolve your pain and use it to flavor your surroundings, turning difficulty into growth and adversity into opportunity, like the salt?" The young man sat in silence, his mind absorbing the lesson. In that moment, something shifted in him. He understood that it wasn't the hardship itself that defined him. It was how he responded to it. He didn't have to let circumstances defeat him. Instead, he could use them to build resilience, wisdom, and inner peace. As he stood up to leave, he thanked the old man not just for his time, but for helping him see life from a new perspective. He felt lighter, clearer, and ready to face the world, not because it had changed, but because he had. Moral of the story: life will always bring challenges. But whether those challenges make us weaker, harder, or wiser depends entirely on how we choose to face them. In the late 1800s, the cities of Manhattan and Brooklyn were rapidly growing, bustling with commerce, trade, and ambition. Separated by the East River, the two boroughs faced a daily challenge. Ferry transport was unreliable and often dangerous, especially in winter. A permanent solution was needed, a bridge unlike any other. But to even imagine such a bridge seemed outrageous at the time. In 1869, John Augustus Roebling, a visionary civil engineer, dared to dream the impossible: to build a suspension bridge that would span the mighty East River and connect Manhattan and Brooklyn. His plan was bold. The proposed structure would be longer than any suspension bridge ever attempted, with towers taller than anything previously constructed in the Western Hemisphere. It would need to support the weight of horse-drawn carriages, streetcars, and thousands of pedestrians. Many experts scoffed at the idea. They said it couldn't be done, that the currents were too strong, the foundations too deep, the span too great. They dismissed Roebling as a dreamer, even a fool. But John Roebling was undeterred. A brilliant mind with an iron will, he had built suspension bridges before. None as large, but each more ambitious than the last. He returned home and shared his vision with his son, Washington Roebling, a young and equally talented engineer. Together, they mapped out a revolutionary plan. They studied the river, designed innovative caissons for underwater work, and outlined construction techniques that had never been tried before. They were confident they could build it. They just needed the opportunity. Eventually, their passion and persistence convinced investors and officials. Financing was secured, and the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge officially began in 1869. For a short time, it seemed like nothing could stop the Roeblings and their groundbreaking project. Then tragedy struck. While taking measurements at the construction site, John Roebling's foot was crushed in a ferry accident. Despite medical treatment, tetanus set in, and he died a few weeks later. The dream he had started now rested solely on the shoulders of his son, Washington. Washington Roebling stepped up as chief engineer. But soon after, another disaster followed. While working in the pressurized underwater caissons, he developed caisson disease, what we now know as decompression sickness. The illness left him severely disabled. He could no longer walk, talk, or even stand. Most people assumed the bridge project was doomed. But what the world didn't know was that Washington Roebling's mind was still razor-sharp. Though he was physically broken, his spirit was far from defeated. Determined not to let his father's legacy and his own efforts go to waste, he found a way to communicate. Using only the movement of one finger, Washington devised a system of tapping, a code, that allowed him to talk to his wife, Emily Warren Roebling, who became the bridge's unlikely and unsung hero. Emily had always stood by her husband's side, but now she took on an extraordinary new role. She studied engineering and mathematics, met with site managers, relayed instructions, and translated her husband's detailed finger-tapped messages into real-time construction decisions. Through Emily, Washington continued to direct every major aspect of the bridge's construction, from calculating stress tolerances to approving material deliveries. This process went on day after day for 13 years. Emily made over 11,000 trips to the construction site during this time. Despite having no formal engineering background, she earned the respect of the workers and engineers alike. Through her strength, loyalty, and brilliance, she became the living voice of her husband's vision. Finally, in 1883, after 14 years of construction, the Brooklyn Bridge was completed. A feat of engineering that stood as the longest suspension bridge in the world and a symbol of resilience, innovation, and unwavering determination. At the grand opening, thousands gathered to walk across the bridge for the first time. Emily Roebling was the first person to cross it, carrying a rooster as a symbol of victory. Though Washington could not attend in person, he watched from a window in their Brooklyn home, knowing that against all odds his dream, and his father's, had been realized. You will discover yourself one level higher after overcoming adversity. Thomas Edison. The story of the Brooklyn Bridge is more than a story of steel, stone, and cables. It is a story of visionaries who never gave up. It is a story of love and sacrifice, of a woman who became an engineer out of necessity, and a man who led with nothing but his mind and one moving finger. Even today, as thousands cross the Brooklyn Bridge each day, few realize the depth of hardship and heroism behind every rivet and stone. But those who know its story understand. Some bridges are built not just with iron and wire, but with heart, courage, and indomitable will. In a quiet town nestled between mountains and rice fields in Japan, a 10-year-old boy made a decision that would change his life forever. Just a year earlier, his life had taken a tragic turn. He had lost his left arm in a devastating car accident. What followed were weeks of surgeries, months of recovery, and an emotional journey filled with fear, frustration, and an overwhelming sense of loss. But amid the silence of hospital walls and the quiet pity of others, the boy found a flame of determination burning within him. He decided he would not let his disability define him. With the encouragement of his mother, the boy sought out a judo master known for his wisdom, patience, and traditional teaching methods. The master was an elderly man, calm in manner and deliberate in thought, with decades of experience in martial arts. He listened quietly as the boy explained his story and his dream to learn judo, despite his missing arm. After a moment of deep reflection, the master simply nodded. "Come back tomorrow," he said. "We will begin." From that day onward, the boy began training. Day after day, he showed up at the dojo, practiced diligently, and listened intently to every word the master spoke. However, as weeks turned into months, something puzzled him. The master only taught him one single move. While his classmates practiced multiple techniques, throws, locks, pins, he was drilled on the same maneuver again and again. Morning to evening, left and right, in every session, he repeated just that one technique. At first, he trusted the process. But after 3 long months, frustration got the better of him. One afternoon, during a water break, he approached his master. "Master," he said hesitantly, "I've been training so hard for months. Why have you only taught me one move?" The master looked at the boy with kind eyes and placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is the only move you need to learn," he replied. "Master it, and it will serve you better than 100 techniques." Though the boy didn't fully understand, something in the master's confidence reassured him. So he continued, training harder, refining his movement, focusing on every tiny detail. Little did he know, the repetition was transforming not just his skill, but his very spirit. Nearly a year into his training, the master told the boy it was time to enter a judo tournament. The boy's eyes widened in disbelief. A tournament? Against other students? He asked. Yes, the master said. You are ready. Despite his nerves, the boy went. Dressed in his white GI, with the sleeves on one side flapping empty, he stood out from the other competitors. Whispers floated through the crowd, and some spectators looked on with pity. But the boy focused on the mat. In the first match, his opponent underestimated him, and within moments, the boy applied the move he had practiced for months. To everyone's surprise, he won effortlessly. The second match was much the same. His technique was quick, precise, and powerful. The third match was harder. His opponent was more aggressive and skilled. But as the boy stayed calm and focused, the other fighter grew impatient. When the time came, the boy saw the opening, executed his signature move, and won again. Now, it was time for the final match, the championship. His opponent was tall, muscular, and clearly experienced. As the match began, the boy found himself struggling. He was knocked off balance, pushed around, and barely keeping up. It looked as though the dream would soon end. At one point, the referee even raised his hand to stop the match, worried the boy might get hurt. But the master calmly stepped forward and said, "Let the boy continue." Reluctantly, the match resumed. This time, something changed. The larger opponent, confident in his dominance, made a fatal mistake. He lowered his guard, believing victory was certain. In that split second, the boy seized his chance. With lightning speed, he performed the same move he had practiced for over a year. The crowd gasped as the larger opponent was flipped and pinned to the mat. The match was over. The boy had won. As they rode home together, the boy sat quietly beside his teacher, still in shock. He looked at the gold medal in his lap and finally spoke. "Master," he said softly, "how did I win a tournament with just one move?" The master smiled, eyes full of pride. "You won for 2 reasons," he explained. "First, you have nearly mastered one of the most dangerous moves in judo. Few people can execute it with the speed and precision that you now can." The boy nodded, still processing. "But second," the master continued, "your opponent's only defense against that move is to grab your left arm." He paused. The boy looked down at where his left arm used to be. "And you don't have one." The boy's eyes widened as the realization sank in. What he had always seen as a weakness had become his greatest strength. Because of his condition, his move was impossible to counter in the usual way. All the pain, all the practice, and all the patience had led him to this moment. Not despite his disability, but because of it. From that day forward, the boy's life changed, not just in judo, but in how he saw himself. He had transformed what others called a limitation into an advantage. He understood now that real strength does not lie in what we have, but in what we do with what we have. The wisdom of his teacher stayed with him forever. Sometimes, a person's weakness becomes their strongest strength. Having an advantage is a good thing, but turning a disadvantage into a strength, that is the mark of true character. We all face challenges. Some are visible, others hidden. But within each struggle lies the seed of growth. With perseverance, belief, and the right guidance, even our deepest pain can be transformed into power. A college graduate looking for a job entered a major creative life competition organized by the National Association of Colleges and Universities. After several preliminary rounds that lasted a month, he was selected as one of the best to compete in the final round. He then struggled to overcome his opponents in the final battle, which lasted 3 tense days and was the most dangerous. His reward was a large sum of money that he had never dreamed of in his previous college life. After leaving the school and escaping the flash cameras of the press, he went into the parking lot to leave. Easy to explain. Uncle, congratulations. It is an honor for you to have achieved the best solution in this difficult situation. I have a story to tell you, but I don't know if it is useful. If you have a small caption, I can understand it. My child is seriously ill with cancer and is in the hospital. If I didn't have such a large account, how much do you need? The student looked at her and asked, truly sympathetic. After listening to the woman tell the whole story, he immediately took out the envelope and told her the amount of money he had just received and gave it all to her. I hope your child is out of danger. Please go home and take care of him right away, he said. Thank you, uncle. I don't know what I have to receive that you are here. Then the woman, moved by the gift, walked out the gate. A few days later, he had the opportunity to return to school. A man was seen approaching the question. You told me that last night you met a woman after life, and you chose her money to cure her dying children, right? The young man confirmed. Then I have to tell you this news so you know. She is a real fraud. She has children who are about to die. You are so gullible. You have been fooled. After a moment of silence, the young man asked again, Is it true that there are no children who are about to die? That is true. I guarantee it. The man made a decisive move. Oh, that is the best news I have heard all day, said the young man. Then he added, We should celebrate that no child died. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support means a lot and helps us keep sharing inspiring content.